Conduct in the City Council chambers. Rules of decorum for the public. Members of the audience shall not engage in disorderly or boisterous conduct, including the utterance of loud, threatening, or abusive language, clapping, whistling, stamping of feet, or other acts which disturb, disrupt, impede, or otherwise render the orderly conduct of the city meeting infeasible. A member of the audience engaging in any such conduct shall, at the discretion of the presiding officer or a majority of the city council, be subject to ejection from the meeting per Government Code Section 54954.3C. Removal from the council chambers. Any person who commits the following acts in respect to a meeting of the city shall be removed from the council chambers per Government Code Section 54954.3C. A, disorderly, contemptuous, or insolent behavior towards the city council or any member thereof, tending to interrupt the due and orderly course of said meeting. A breach of peace, boisterous conduct, or violent disturbance tending to interrupt the due and orderly course of said meeting. Disobedience of any lawful order from the mayor, which shall include an order to be seated or to refrain from addressing the city council, and any other unlawful interference with the due and orderly course of said meeting. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Taft City Council Successor Agency Joint Regularly Scheduled Meeting for Tuesday, December the 6th, 2022. The City of Taft Council meetings are being held in person with full capacity seating and are live streamed at www.youtube.com/user/City of Taft. Public comments can be made in person and also can be received per the following. Written comments may be dropped off in the drop box in front of City Hall. Comments may be emailed to the city clerk at cityclerk@cityoftaft.org. They can also be made by phone to the city clerk's office at 661-763-1222. Public comments will be accepted up until 5 p.m. the day of the meeting. All comments received will be read into the record. We're going to begin this evening's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Jeff Evelyn, followed by an invocation by Stephen McDaniel. So if you will join us, please.
Stand, salute, and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you've given upon our city. We pray that you would bless this meeting tonight, bless our city council, and continue to give us prosperity and give us your guidance. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Steve. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Knorr.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cryer.
Here.
Councilmember Bryant.
Here.
Councilmember Eveland.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
All right, first item on this evening's agenda, certificate of commendations for two council members. That'd be Councilmember Jeff Eveland and Councilmember Ed Whiting. I'm going to read these to you. We just heard during the invocation about the fact that the city has been blessed with so many people who come forward to volunteer, to be a part of our community, above and beyond just living here, to become a part of things. And that is true for these two gentlemen. So I'll begin with Councilman Eveland's, City of Taft, State of California. Certificate of commendation presented to Jeff Eveland in appreciation of his years of service on the Taft City Council. Whereas Jeff Eveland has lived in Taft the majority of his life, and he actually ended up in Taft because his granddad was stationed at the historic Gardner Field. And whereas after graduating Taft Union High School, Jeff followed in Dad's and Granddad's footsteps and joined the United States Army and was stationed in Germany, where he witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall. And whereas after his time in the Army, he moved back to Taft and went to work for Chevron, and while working in the oil industry, also volunteered on a search and rescue dive team. And whereas Jeff ended his career with Chevron and went on to serve the West Side and much of Kern County for 25 years as a deputy and then sergeant with Kern County Sheriff's Department. And whereas Jeff currently is a member of the American Legion, where he has donated his monthly council stipend, and he and his wife, Adrienne, have 4 children and 7 grandchildren. And whereas Jeff began his 4 years of service to Taft on the Taft City Council on December 18th, 2018, also serving on the Public Safety and Traffic Committee. Therefore, the City Council of the City of Taft, on behalf of the citizens of the community and all city employees, hereby recognize Jeff Evelyn as a dedicated and valued servant of the City of Taft and its citizens, and extends their best wishes for his future endeavors. Dated this 6th day of December 2022, signed by myself and the other 4 council members. You are, sir. If you'd like to take a moment to say something to the people.
Well, what can I say? I made some comments here a few meetings ago that explained why I wasn't running again. So, since I was a kid, since I was 18, I've looked at I guess you could say, the occupation of service to your community, your state, your nation, as a priority. And that was handed down several generations in my family, whether it be the military or in whatever capacity. I believe in that. I believe that the folks coming onto the council also have that same frame of mind, that they believe in serving this community. I'll say that I have spent the last 4 years on this committee, very proud of what's been accomplished and the service that this council's provided to the city of Taft. I came in, obviously I had about half a clue as to what the expectations were and what was actually done on this committee. But I'll say I had the opportunity to serve with very honorable and very intent people on benefiting the city of Taft. And that's both with the staff here and with my fellow council members. It's an honor that I'll cherish forever, and I'm very glad I had the opportunity, and I'm glad that the city of Taft afforded me that opportunity. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, that's plenty. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Next up, certificate of commendation for Councilman Ed Whiting. City of Taft, State of California certificate of commendation presented to Ed Whiting in appreciation of his years of service on the Taft City Council. Whereas Ed Whiting has always had a passion for public service and began his career by serving his country in the United States Air Force as a member of the Security Police. And whereas he continued his passion for public service by serving the West Side for 32 years with the Taft Police Department, retiring in February 2018. And whereas in 2017, Whiting received the Kern Council of Governments Richard A. Maxwell Regional Award of Merit for a public official. And whereas he has served on the Kern Chiefs Council, Office of Emergency Services, and the Street Interdiction Team for the county, held a seat on the West Side Board of Directors, and was a member of the Kiwanis Club in Taft. And whereas Ed began his 4 years of service to Taft on the Taft City Council on December 18, 2018, also serving on the Public Safety Committee, Public Works Committee, Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee, and Traffic Committee. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Taft, on behalf of the citizens of the community and all city employees, hereby recognizes Ed Whiting as a dedicated and valued servant of the City of Taft and its citizens, and extends their best wishes for his future endeavors. Dated this 6th day of December, 2022, signed by myself and all the council members. Thank you very much, Ed White. Here you are, sir. If you would like to say a few words.
Yeah, I'm very honored. First, I'd like to thank all the voters that turned out for the midterm election. And I wish more people would have voted. I know we have a lot more people out there who can vote. Your vote is very important. Second, congratulations to Josh Bryant and Carlos Chavera and Ron Waldrop on their election wins. Hopefully we can get the remaining 100 votes counted from our Kern County Elections Division sometime this year. I'd like to personally thank my friend and Mayor Dave Knorr for his leadership and for his knowledge of all things Taft. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank our Mayor Pro Tem Marshall Cryer for his stewardship of the city, but also for his reputation for us at the Kern Council of Governments, for which he has done that steadfastly now for how many years, Marshall?
Since Paul Linder left, a long time.
For a number of years, and he's taken good care of us, representing us there. I'd also like to thank Josh Bryant and Jeff Evelyn for their selfless devotion to the citizens of Taft, for which they deserve our recognition all the time that they're here. Really, they've done an outstanding job. When I ran for this office, I wanted to give back to the city of Taft for all the years that they gave me, and I have done that. And last, it's just been a pleasure and a privilege to serve all the citizens of Taft, and thank you very much for allowing me to serve. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you both very much. It's no secret that this group of individuals sitting up on the dais right now holds the city manager and his team and all of our staff in very high regard. And it makes it so easy to have the opportunity to represent the people of the city of Taft when you represent such a quality, qualified, sincere team. They play well together, for lack of a better term. So it certainly makes it enjoyable to be up here and leave the madness somewhere else outside of our city limits. So thank you both, and thank you all. Next up, item number 2, presentation, Clear Source Financial Consulting User and Regulatory Fee Studies. City Manager Joan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll introduce Terry Matson with Clear Source.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this evening on this topic of user and regulatory fees. My name is Terry Madsen. I'm here from Clear Source Financial Consulting, and our firm helps communities throughout the state identify and recover the cost of providing fee-related services. I have about a 27-slide presentation this evening. I know you have a full agenda, so I will do my best to not be long-winded. And if there's anything you want to come back to during Q&A, we can do that. But I'll try and keep us moving through the topic. Next slide, please. Just to orient you to the presentation, we'll be doing just a little bit of background on this project and fees in general. Then we'd like to talk through some fundamentals and terminology so that we're speaking a common language as it relates to this topic. A common language that is really throughout California. And then in the third portion of the presentation, we'll dive into findings that are specific to Taft. And then we'll conclude with what are we asking the council to consider. So cities collect fees and charges, the items that you're examining this evening, when they provide a service that is either required on behalf of an applicant, like a requirement of the building code or your municipal code. So it's either a service that's required to be performed by the city or it's requested to be performed by the city. Can you fingerprint me? Or can you give me reserved access to a picnic facility? Those kind of things. That's when we collect fees for specific services. And as a city, as decision makers, you know you have your primary revenue source is your tax revenues, but they're limited in nature, right? So you have sort of magnitudinal need with finite resource. And what communities typically do is they say, as much as possible, I will use my tax resources to provide that broad community-wide benefit type service. We think of these as public works services, public safety services, park maintenance services, and occasionally we use things like fees and charges if we see sort of a more direct receiver of service. The most common things we think about are like private development plan review, inspections required to serve private development, those kind of things. So a matter of importance for the council and any interested members of the public, what we like to clarify is what is being examined and what is not being examined. And I think the most important part is actually what is not being examined as part of this topic. We are not examining taxes. We are not examining assessments. We are not examining utility rates. The things that our Taft residents and businesses are most familiar with and sort of being touched by on a day-to-day basis. Instead, we're examining things like building permitting, requests for temporary encroachment in the city right away by utility companies, things like that, these sort of discrete, periodic activities and needs. So why do cities examine fees and why do they charge them? So why do they do studies like the one we just wrapped up in Taft, and why do they collect fees to begin with? We do studies periodically to make sure that a fee is really a fee. So in California, there's these legal requirements that say a tax is different than a fee, and if you want to call yourself a fee, you have to follow certain procedural requirements. You can't turn a fee into a profit-making activity, right? And so we do these types of studies to confirm that we really are in compliance with California government code and California Constitution that's sort of driving how we establish fees. But also, I think an important bullet point is this idea of we establish fees to help us continue to meet the service level expectations of our community, right? So as fee payers or citizens, if we need building permitting services or plan review services, we have an expectation that we'll be able to receive those services in a timely manner, those kind of things. Collecting fees to recover our costs of performing those services helps us continue to meet that service level expectation. Next slide, please. I mentioned this idea of California government code and California Constitution. That's our two primary informers of how we calculate cost of service and fees. And the two main things they tell us is that a fee should be correlated to your cost of providing service. So if something's intensive and takes a lot of effort, you should identify a lot of cost to that activity, and the fee could link to that intensive effort versus something that's easier in nature. You would associate a lower cost with something that takes an hour than something that takes a month of review, some major environmental review or something like that. And then the other idea that's really important is it's siloed. So building fees should cover the costs of building related activities, but not public works activities. Planning fees should cover the costs of planning review, not police services. So they're saying, hey, make sure when you're collecting a fee that it's for the service that's actually being provided, that you can silo off costs and recover that way. Those are the things we think about. And this study does both of those things. Next slide, please. Because these are fees and not taxes, they are established by the city council at the conclusion of a public hearing. And so that's what's being considered this evening. One of the things we try and remind councils is they are intended to be dynamic. So a fee schedule, you really want to be thinking through your fees as part of your normal course of operations, like your just sort of standard operating procedures. As you build a budget, you think through what are my expenditures, what are my revenue sources, and those kind of things. So if the council decides to adopt an updated fee schedule this evening, what we try and remind you is, our hope is that it will be re-examined on an ongoing basis, that the fees would be recalibrated, that they would be adjusted, but that it's a living document rather than a decade without change type document. Next slide. So terminology-wise, in the report that you received and in the agenda report and throughout my presentation this evening, I'll reference these phrases like cost of service, cost recovery, subsidy. And in our industries, whatever industries we're part of, we may use similar phrases, but I just want to use a common definition for purposes of this topic. So for purposes of this topic, when we think about our cost of service, what we're saying is the things we're examining are service-based in nature. So there is either some form of in-house labor being provided or contract service support being provided, but the idea is there's labor being provided to either review plans or to go out and conduct a field inspection or to provide a report, those kind of things. So we have to value the cost of providing that service. And when we think about it, we think about salaries, benefits, the associated services and supplies, like if I use a vehicle, if I wear a uniform, if I receive payroll support and HR support, all of these things that are required for me to go out and perform these outward-facing services to the community. That's our full cost of service. Our cost recovery is the difference between what we would collect in a fee and what it actually costs us to perform. And so that's really important. The fee and the cost of service are potentially two different things. The first thing we're trying to do is identify what does it cost us to perform the service, and the second is we make a decision of, do I want to charge that in a fee or something less than that? The subsidy is the difference between what it costs us and what we charge in a fee. So if something costs the city $200 to perform and the city collects a fee of $100, the city still incurred an expense of $200. It just recovered $100 from the receiver of service, and the other $100 is paid from some other Taft revenue source, primarily typically your general fund. Okay. So this is just another way to express that concept of cost of service. Remember, because we're dealing with service, time is a driver. So what we do is we work with staff to figure out how long do these activities typically take. If 10 requests for a specific application type walk in the door, 6 out of 10 times, what are we dealing with in Taft? How many rounds of review are we having to go through? What kind of back and forth? What is the typical inspection level required? And so we work with that, and then we value time, and we can say, let's say I'm worth $100 an hour and something takes me an hour to perform, we'd say my cost of service is $100. If a different activity takes me 3 hours to perform, we'd say my cost of service is $300. From a cost recovery perspective, we know that our cost of service represents our legal ceiling, but we could choose to recover something less than that if there's any sort of community value or policy that supersedes our need for or our target for full cost recovery. And we'll talk about a couple areas where staff is recommending less than full cost recovery in some of these services. Next slide, please. And so just as a reminder, if you looked at this in chart form, the full cost of service is what you're able to collect from a fee. If you choose to collect something less than that, the difference between what you collect and what it costs you is what's being subsidized from some other city resource. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk through, that is common throughout California, from municipality to municipality to municipality. The same rules apply. And now we'll say, using those rules and those fundamentals, what are we seeing and recommending for City of Taft this round? And so you have some administrative rates, very minor in nature, and some facility rental fees that really aren't driven by this concept of cost of service. It's more exclusive use of city property. So very minor stuff here. The proposed changes are less than $10 typically. And a lot of times in the administrative world, you have some state limitations on you. So even if you know what it costs me to provide a service, I can't actually recover that because I have some state limitations on public records and things like that. For animal regulation, this is like dog licensing and impounding. Again, this is really primarily a public safety service, so there is not a lot of cost recovery here. That is common from municipality to municipality, but what we are trying to encourage is responsible animal ownership. So we want people to license their animals. So if we find a loose animal or somebody gets bit, we can figure out, has that animal been vaccinated, who's the owner, those kind of things. That's the purpose of animal licensing and animal regulation fees. We are proposing to adjust these, very minor adjustment, less than $5. But the idea is that over time, you would align yourself with like Kern County. A lot of municipalities, cities sort of just look to a county office as sort of a good benchmark. Kern County is just slightly higher than you, but we didn't want to do some sort of drastic overnight shift. The idea is more of an incremental phase in and really just, again, compliance is our primary goal over like a revenue increase. Next slide. On the building side, this is where your high volume stuff happens from a fee perspective. Building permitting is probably your highest volume activity. And what we're doing here is really trying to restructure your fee schedule to where we say, hey, there's a clear connection between the service being provided and the fee being collected. If an applicant comes in the door, a contractor comes in the door, something like that and says, can you help me understand how these fees are built today? You have a good supporting document that says it assumes that, this many inspections at half an hour per inspection, that kind of thing. We also have fixed fees for the majority of your common permits. So we tried to make the fee schedule as simple as possible for the things that are really coming in the door day after day. So that you could easily forecast. As a contractor, you could walk in to bid a job and have a good idea of what the resident would be likely to pay in permit fees. The fees also are proposed to scale really well for that idea of increased complexity. So as a project gets more complex, the fee would reflect that complexity. A project that's less complex, the fee would reflect a lower level of complexity, a lower fee. Next slide. On the building side, full cost recovery is targeted for most of these fees. The idea here is there is a direct receiver of service. If I go build, if I want to go build something from the ground up, I'm a beneficiary of that new construction, any sort of increased land value that comes from that, all those kind of things. So that's common throughout the state to target high cost recovery for development related services. You do target full cost recovery for most fees in this proposed fee schedule, but there are a few areas where we're recommending less than full cost recovery, and it's on the minor residential permits where we really do want people to say, I don't want the permit fees to be a disincentive for me to come in and do things that really have either a health and safety component or just they're fairly minor in nature, and we want to collaborate with our community. So it's residential HVAC changeout type stuff, installing residential rooftop solar, any service panel upgrades that are typically associated with that rooftop solar install, and then residential water heater changeouts. Next slide, please. Now I'll move into the land development engineering type stuff. So that was building. Now we're moving into land development engineering and encroachments. This is stuff that is a lot of times, maybe a utility company wants to come and inspect work in the right of way, but we maybe have to monitor traffic, those kind of things. So what we're doing is developing flat fees for minor work that's sort of homogeneous in nature, so we don't have to manage any deposits for this minor type stuff. but we built fees that can scale to what is happening. So are we doing multiple potholes in the road? Are we trenching? Are we doing a residential driveway encroachment? What is being reviewed and what is being proposed, and the fees reflect that type of review effort. And then when you do use contract engineering services for your more complex stuff, we do have a deposit-based system that ensures that Taft can be made whole for any sort of outside costs that you would incur. So you might have in-house support that's fixed fee-based, but if a contractor's getting involved to review plans and we don't really know what kind of submittal we're gonna get or how many rounds of back and forth, that is a deposit-based scenario so that Taft can feel comfortable that we're not gonna pay contractor bills on behalf of a utility company or a private developer. The encroachments, we just talked about those. Next slide, please. So planning fees, these are for reviews for entitlements, reviews for compliance with city municipal code. And it's the most detailed work that you encounter at the City of Taft, because a lot of it is sort of design in nature. I want to propose something, but I need to ensure that it complies with the look and feel we're going for in Taft, all of the various setback requirements, zoning requirements, those kind of things. So it's an intensive process. There's a lot of hand-holding in some of these more complex things. And what you see is, what you're seeing in Taft is not uncommon to what we see in other communities we work with, which is you have a fluctuating level of cost recovery currently. So if you looked at your current fees, some of them, you have pretty decent cost recovery today, and others, it's really low. Because it might take a lot of time to perform a review service today, but you just have a low fee in place. So we worked with staff extensively to figure out, can we use a sort of a uniform philosophy of cost recovery? And we did. So next slide. What we're targeting is that for most of the applications that you would review, we do target full cost recovery, but there's a couple scenarios where less than full cost recovery would be targeted. It's on maybe appeals. So if somebody, they have paid for an application review and we've worked with them, but staff has determined that we don't think this project can move forward, and they want to have a chance for a planning commission to review it or a city council to review it. We do want to offer that opportunity while acknowledging it is an intensive effort to deal with an appeal. So we try and work with them to understand why the decision was made in the first place. But then if they do want to appeal, there is a fee there, but it's less than full cost recovery. And then the other area would be like temporary use permits, seasonal type stuff that's coming through your door. I think like a Christmas tree lot might be an example of that. Next slide. Police services. Police services is really a tax-funded service for what most of us think about as police. Patrol service, emergency response, those kind of things. That will continue to be a tax-funded service. What we're talking about here on police fees is discrete requests for like traffic collision reports, vehicle impounding, fingerprinting, concealed weapons permitting, those kind of items where I'm requesting something specific to me. And so we did just recalibrate that cost of service and recommend some fee adjustments there. And so that is really an overview of the study. There's a lot of items in that fee schedule, but that gives you the broad philosophy that we used. Again, because these are fees, they're intended to be considered by the city council at the conclusion of a public hearing. And so one other item I want to mention is in the adopting resolution, there's a reference in there that says, hey, if the city council chooses to adopt these fees, in order to help them not go stagnant for like a decade, you can have an annual inflationary adjustment. So you could look at a regional cost inflator and direct the city manager, I still want you to bring them back before me. I still want you to show me as a city council, what my new fees would be in 23, 24, 24, 25, and in a future year. But I do want you to proactively manage these and continue to adjust them. The feedback we hear from stakeholder groups, from people on the other side of the table, is their preference is ongoing adjustment rather than long-term stagnation with more significant sort of one-time adjustment. So we built that into the resolution if that's something you'd like to consider. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to receive feedback or questions.
All right, thank you very much. So that concludes the presentation. The recommendation is conduct a public hearing. So I'm going to open such hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on behalf of or in opposition to this item, please step forward. Seeing none, I would ask the clerk, did we receive any via phone or email regarding this item? None. All right, thank you. Therefore, I will close the public hearing. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adopt a resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft, California, adopting a schedule of user and regulatory fees for various city services."
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion, and Councilman Evelyn had the second?
Perfect.
Oh, you had the first?
No, I said
The
perfect.
first, second. Okay.
Was on first?
Yeah, it was
First.
on first.
Second
All right.
motion?
Very good, then. I have a motion and a second. Councilman Bryant, you made the motion, sir. Would you care to begin the discussion on this?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple questions, and Mr. Staples, you may be able to help me with this. One, I appreciate your presentation. I think the clarity is important. Obviously, we have a whole lot of people here that are paying a bunch of attention, but I think the fact that we made the effort is very, very critical to our ongoing desire to be transparent. But Mr. Staples, I know he mentioned that there may be a couple process tweaks in terms of what we're doing today versus what we could be doing should we adopt the resolution tonight. How big a shift is that for us from what we've been doing for the last, let's say, 10 years? The deposit-based type planning or fee-based schedule, is that not something we've been doing before?
No, we were doing it before, but as Terry mentioned, a couple of the fixed fees that we had were a little on the lower side. If you recall, the prior round of going through the fee update was right at the kind of exit of the prior recession. And I totally understand that, we're trying to keep costs low to still allow applications to still come in and not deter those. So there was definitely a point in time when those were adopted. So we're definitely looking more at the 100% cost recovery on things. We did adjust some and made sure we're applying the appropriate amount of work hours to each of the application types to make sure we're hitting the right number.
Wonderful. And so it's been roughly 10 years since we've done a recent study. And I think to your point, as opposed to having those sharp increases, the ability to add an inflationary item into a fee schedule, is that new? Is that not something we could have done before, or we just decided not to do it? I'm not familiar.
10 years ago, it was much less common.
Okay.
It's gained popularity in recent years, and so this is your first study since it's gained popularity.
Wonderful. And that does not require a study because it's a governmentally published figure.
Right, and we wouldn't want, periodically, you would still go through an effort like this, but it would be a periodic effort to recalibrate and validate. So it's not a permission for eternity. You still have the fundamental, we don't want to exceed our cost of service. We want to ensure there's a correlation between costs. But it does establish some sort of reasonableness in terms of annual adjustment without a ton of effort.
Very good, thank you. The last thing we want to do, I know at least I feel this way, and I believe all the councilmen here beside me feel the same way, is to be an impediment upon the citizens and/or businesses here in town. That's why we've done our best to try to keep costs low, especially for folks who want to live here and folks who want to produce an income here. But that's on the front side. Now, you mentioned one thing that's really important is that city subsidy. And so when you're not collecting those fees and not getting the cost recovery that you could be, you become an impediment on the back end and you're unable to provide other city services or things. So it's a double-edged sword. And I think it's important that we walk a very, very fine line, but I appreciate the efforts and I look forward to discussing this further. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Councilman Evelyn, I believe you had the second, sir.
Yeah, just a couple things on the built-in inflationary rate adjustment. So is there, I know you said an annual revisit, basically, but in reality, especially during this insane inflation that we've just decided was okay for some reason in the United States, during this, is there a sundown on that? Is there a, hey, we need to revote this in 3 years, 4 years to see if we're, rather than just, because at some point, it's gonna be very cost prohibitive for somebody to be permitted to do specific things or fee adjustments to come in. So is there a, hey, you know what, we decided is for the next 3 years, we're not gonna have an inflationary adjustment. So is that built in as well?
So the way it reads is, right now, the way it reads is the city manager may apply an inflationary adjustment, and the inflationary adjustment is it's identified as a regional cost inflator. It's predetermined, but in the agencies that we serve that have this type of predetermined regional cost inflator, they still are bound by a sense of rationality. So if you had a 9% regional cost inflation, but your own city of Taft costs, I didn't change labor rates, those kind of things, it would
Right.
be, so we wouldn't recommend that you just go and, without thought, apply an inflationary adjustment.
That's where I was going with that,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. That's what I was trying to get at. I might not have stated it very well, but the idea that, we haven't necessarily changed anything that would have really been, shot up inflation locally, but we're still having this continued, which, I know in most major projects, it might not be that huge of a deal, but for our citizens here at a smaller level, we don't want anything to be cost prohibitive. So, thank you, I appreciate that. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Councilman Whiting.
Thank you, sir. This is for Mark Staples. How much of your research has been conducted at the police station for the appropriate fees that we've done there? Okay, either one of you.
Delegation, I like it.
So, so your fees that, are in your fee schedule are consistent with other fees that we would see throughout Kern County and other departments. So the listing of fee-related services feels like a good comprehensive list. Fingerprinting, concealed weapon permitting, vehicle impounding, report producing, those are police fee-related services, requests for special police services. So we felt like your list was a good list, and the time estimates were reviewed by staff. And then occasionally your cost of service may be higher than what you actually want to recover in a fee. So on the police side, there are some items where you don't go to full cost recovery. Again, you might just have sort of some public safety goals and things like that where you're saying it's the double, there's multiple objectives you're trying to accomplish, and you want to remain in the realm of the region. So it might cost you $30 to prepare a report, but the region charges $15 for report reproduction, and you set a fee of $15. So that's what we did with staff.
Specifically, was DUI cost recovery looked at?
Hourly rates were produced that would be used for DUI cost recovery, yes.
Okay, good. Now, some of those fees we can't change. For example, CCW's state will only allow us to charge so much above what they charge.
Yep.
Nothing we can do about that.
Yeah, but we did recalibrate your hourly police services rates that you would use to support DUI cost recovery billing.
Good, thank you very much.
Yep.
Right, anything else, Councilman?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Crier.
Thank you, Mayor. You can stand up at the podium. It's a lot back and forth. I know you don't need to exercise that much, but thank you. What do you recommend to review our fee structure? Is it every 5 years, every 10 years, or depends on say, some other element in there?
Yeah, what we tell communities, if they ask our advice, and we say it is our advice only, but typically what we see is like every 3 to 5 years, you would do some sort of study like you just went through, and I think 5 years is totally fine. I would say the driver for a comprehensive study somewhere earlier than 3 to 5 years is some sort of significant organizational shift. If you consolidated departments or something like that, or you added a completely new budget unit where you're saying, we don't look the same as we did 2 years ago, that's a driver for it may be time to do another study. But if you say, we generally look the same as we did a few years back, it's just we might have had some inflationary adjustments, we might have filled a vacant position, that kind of thing. 3 to 5 years, you're totally fine. We just wouldn't want you, we would not want you to go a decade. Either way, so if you didn't change fees, if you just left your fee schedule completely unchanged, you'd be fine to go a decade without a fee update and feel pretty comfortable that you're not overcharging anybody. But we'd say is, hey, operationally, you're creating some challenges for yourself and you're positioning yourself for some big spikes later on. And if you do apply inflationary adjustments, we wouldn't want you to go 10 years because we would want to check against whatever adjustments we made for rationality and reasonableness.
Now, another question I have is, sometimes you have a big development coming in or a new super shopping center or something. Could, in the best interest of the city, could we adjust the permitting fees and other fees associated with it for the best interest of the city to get them, dangle a carrot in front of the...
Incentivize.
So I will do some very minor comments on this, but I'll defer to the city attorney if anything is if I'm speaking inappropriately. I do think if you wanted to enter into any sort of modified agreement, you do it via the concept of a development agreement, where you outline specific terms that we've agreed to. But I don't think that the schedule isn't built to allow staff to sort of pick and choose when to apply fees and when to subsidize. It's intended to be a fixed fee schedule unless some alternative direction is received.
Did you play baseball while you were younger?
Do I keep hitting that? I keep catching it.
Catching it.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry, Mark had told me, be careful, don't hit that all the time.
You're pretty good at it. I just know that, I want to keep our city where rates are reasonable because we're trying to attract new businesses here in town and stuff, and construction and companies that will bring in hire employees and value-added products and stuff. And we are very much a business-friendly town, and a lot of us, our citizens here are, we're not rich or anything by any means or anything, but, we like to watch our costs too. If, like I say, a water heater in a house goes down, and you see people bootlegging it, to their house and put it in there just to avoid a pay. I think it's about $30 for a fee for a hot water tank. It's not much, but if you have it too high, then they'll do it. But it's cheap. Like you mentioned earlier, they don't mind paying it because, to me, safety, making sure everything's strapped down right in case of an earthquake or whatever natural disaster could happen, that they're safe and the neighbors are safe. There's things like that. It's important.
Yep.
And so I like what we're doing. But were you the one that did it last 10 years ago here? Okay.
It's through a different firm. So I worked for a different firm, but I participated in the study.
Now, would your firm be the one that would come to us in 5 years or 3 years and to give us a little, hey, it's been 3-5 years, you're up to for a fee increase or decrease or look at?
We could absolutely be that. At the time, 3 to 5 years from now, you decide. So we have just a one-time contract with Taft to do this project. 3 to 5 years from now, you could decide. But if, let's say your city staff says, or council gives the direction, I do want this fee schedule to be more dynamic. I do want sort of a annual recalibration. A lot of times that's a great effort. And it's a procedural improvement, but you may be under-resourced, right? Staff says, man, that's a challenge because I'm trying to build a budget. We help a lot of communities on an annual basis so that we can keep in touch with a planning director where they say, yeah, I understand the inflationary adjustment, but this one, we shouldn't do an inflationary adjustment. Let's go tell the council, can we hold off on an inflationary adjustment for this particular reason? And then council gets to decide. So we do help a lot of communities sort of year after year after year, but it's not, you could select any firm, there's many qualified.
You are correct, the fees is not gonna replace what our actual costs are. And, it's just say we have to, make it where it's, for a town our size, what the cost is gonna be that we should charge versus a big city. But, I do thank you for being here, and, Mayor, it's your turn.
Oh, indeed, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a couple of different points that were made during the course here, and I want to clarify a couple of them for the people out there in the city of Taft, as well as myself and the rest of us up here. You made a statement that perhaps some of our cost recovery, if we were to take a look at that and we were still substantially below surrounding areas, Kern County, that we might want to consider that gap. But the overriding consideration there would be cost recovery, or what we deem to be appropriate portions of cost recovery, if our business plan dictates that we can perform that service or provide that service at a substantial discount, then the county around us, that's okay.
Absolutely, and I thank you for clarifying that. So the county or any other surrounding jurisdiction had zero influence in the calculation of Taft's cost of service.
That's correct.
Taft's cost of service was linked to your expenditures and your organizational makeup. The slide that I think triggered that statement was on the animal licensing fees. I referenced that you have very low cost recovery, and a lot of times you might say, but again, that is city after city after city has low cost recovery, because if you wanted to recover your cost of animal regulation via a license fee, you'd have to charge $1,000 per dog license, and no one will get a dog license, right? So now we've been ineffective in our application of fees. But sometimes when you have low cost recovery and you try and figure out what is a reasonable level to take myself to, a benchmark of some other community can be helpful. That's the idea there. But you are 100% correct. We are not being influenced there in terms of our cost of service.
All right, very good. We cannot, as a community, spend money based on other communities' budgets,
Yep.
just as surely as we will not charge the people that live within this community fees based on other people's costs.
You got it.
All right, thank you very much. Under the less than full cost recovery, one thing that I did see that was missing, especially when you consider something that came before this council within the last few meetings, that was residential EV charging stations. I don't know if any of y'all missed that, but replacing hot water heaters and upgrading a panel. Well, in this rush to green world that we live in, especially with our current governor, if you're going to replace your on-demand gas-fired hot water heater with an electric on-demand hot water heater, you are going to be upgrading your panel and putting in an additional 70 amp 2-pole breaker. So one thing I did see missing from that was residential EV charging stations. I don't know if that's a separate item to be included later. Mark, would you care to comment on that?
Sure, Mayor Knorr. Related to that, I guess one way to answer your question there is a specific line item when it comes to the rooftop solar. Mm-hmm. And part of that is because the state law does cover and regulate the cost and fees. That's why it was on the list of items that isn't fully cost recovered. But when it comes to the EV charging stations, as of today, the state has not yet set a similar cap to that. So we would be charging the time to review whatever plans are submitted and follow the typical permit charging based on the valuation of the project.
And in that regard, I would think that would be something that could be fairly complicated. There's a lot of housing stock in the city and surrounding the city where they have a 100-amp panel. And, you know, if they are forced at some point in time to have to somehow purchase a battery-powered car and then charge that battery-powered car after they get their electric hot water heater and their electric cooktop, then they're gonna have to do serious upgrades. And looking at the existing system versus what you had to upgrade to could be very time-consuming, in point of fact. So, all right, it sounds like something that's going to shape itself in the future, I would have to guess.
Yes.
All right, I thank you very much for that. Lastly, I understand the cost adjustment based on CPI, and this is something that was addressed with the cost of taxes on gas and diesel. And here's a harsh reality, and that is if you do automatic annual adjustments based on CPI, let's just say the past 12 months, for instance, then at a time when inflationary pressures are having a disproportionately negatively effect on household finance, like 9% inflation perhaps, if you were to automatically then adjust your rates based on that CPI, you are hitting the taxpayers and the consumers at their weakest moment, automatically, without discussion nor consideration. I do not believe in that, not for one moment. So I will tell you that I believe revisiting this, plus I believe it can be cumbersome. I mean, after all, if you're going to do this and you're going to do it right, it takes a great deal of time. I think if this is visited perhaps semi-annually, and the city manager, in working with the planning director, should any anomaly come along, any requirement come from the state of California, the federal government, whatever the case may be, that is going to have an appreciable effect on any of these things, it's obvious that they will bring it before this council, and you'll do it based on when it happens, not based on some arbitrary calendar day. So it would be my suggestion, if for consideration of this council, if we're talking about, I don't see automatic increases. What I would suggest is that, at a minimum, every 2 years, that we get some type of not a report, but just come before the council. When I say come, that would be through the city manager in conjunction with the planning director, just say, hey, you know what? We're 2 years into this thing. We've looked it over. There's nothing really new and startling coming at us. Our costs have not really gone up that much, whether or not the CPI has. But I just want to let you all know that we have indeed, as we talked about, considered it, looked it over. We don't have any plans to change anything at this point in time, but we reserve the right, should there be any monumental changes, to come before you. And then I really believe that is enough. 10 years is too much. I think you're right. But this city and the size of this city and knowing what's going on, I don't think we need to plug ourselves into any automatic rate increases based on CPI. I would be adamantly opposed to that. I can tell you that.
And we would totally receive that feedback, Mayor. It's the council's discretion. I just want to add one comment that, again, I think the city attorney could chime in on if I'm speaking incorrectly. So remember, council member, is it Eveland?
Yes.
Eveland said, would you just automatically apply it without thought? And I said, no. As the council, you could give direction to your city manager, hey, this is in the resolution, but we want you to come back before us. And so we have city after city that is experiencing 8% cost inflation right now and is not applying an 8% inflator, even though their resolution authorizes them to do an annual adjustment linked to CPI. They're making a deliberate choice not to go there. I think you have freedom when you build into the resolution to not go there. Where I think you lack the freedom you're hoping for, Mayor, is when you don't have any predetermined authority. I believe the government code says before adopting any new or increased fees, you have to do another public hearing. And typically, we would say a public hearing should be supported by an analysis that says, whatever you're considering at this public hearing is not going to exceed your cost of service. I just wouldn't want to trap you into a comprehensive study every time you want to consider what feels like a very incremental fee adjustment. Even as a council, you say, I only want 2%. I worry that that 2% by definition is a increased fee, and an increased fee requires a public hearing, and a public hearing is usually supported by sort of this massive study.
So the verbiage, oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, go right ahead.
No, so the verbiage that you're suggesting in this resolution gives us the flexibility to impose such an inflator, or up to such an inflator based on staff discretion and council approval. And without such a clause, we would not have the ability, and we'd be back in the same situation in that same amount of time. So,
But it is not written as a part of the resolution that there is an automatic increase based on CPI or any other thing.
It's the word may, not the word shall.
So if
Very good.
CPI is 8 and we calculate the staff cost at 2, we'd make a recommendation at 2, and that would require a costly study.
Okay. Do you, and I'm asking this question of the city manager at this point in time, do you think it's necessary to do this on an annual basis?
No, not here locally, probably 3 years, I would say.
Okay. So if we went 2, that would be, definitely give you room and it would keep us from going so far that we don't create that great big incremental
We
issue.
have access to their studies, so we're looking at paying benefits and all the other factors that go in, some
Okay.
changes. So staff could review it, save a lot of time and money from the official.
All right, very good. All right, as long as, and thank you for that clarification, and thank you, City Manager Jones, for that clarification as well. I would think that every 2 years, based on things and based on our community, would be sufficient so as not to overburden staff, because there's plenty of other things going on. I would think that would be fine, and to have the flexibility to bring it before the council, but it will not be it will not be automatic, then I'm okay with that as well. Any comments, gentlemen, regarding that?
wholeheartedly agree.
Yep, same. Agreed. I agree as well.
All right then, very good, thank you very much. That then is all the questions that I have. So, if there's no further discussion on this item, gentlemen? Okay, then we have a motion and we have a second. I'll reread the motion. The motion is to adopt a resolution entitled Resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft, California, adopting a schedule of user and regulatory fees for various city services. Upon clarification of the verbiage in that resolution, I had a motion and a second.
Yes.
As long as that motion and second does not change, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Crier,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant,
Yes.
Councilmember Evelyn,
Yes.
Councilmember Whiting,
yes.
Mayor Nor.
Yes, thank you very much. That passes on a 5-0 vote. Thank you for the discussion, and thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that. All right. Next item on this evening's agenda, item number 4, citizens request public comments. There are no individuals signed up on the sheet. Did anybody contact you via email or over the phone? No. Okay, then I don't have to read all that stuff. Okay, next up, item number 5, council statements, non-action. Councilman Evelyn, I'll begin with you, sir.
I think I've already made my comments for the night, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, you bet. Councilman Whiting.
Thank you, sir. Same applies here.
Okay. Councilman Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, as usual this time of year, we find our meeting after the Christmas parade, and as usual, we're thanking the same folks, but for good reason. The chamber put on a heck of an event. I don't know that I remember in the last 8 years, folks being as excited and thankful for the parade as I've seen just today. And that makes me happy, right? I wasn't expecting that because it seemed pretty normal. Not that it was bad. It just seemed like it was routine. But to see everybody very, very happy and thankful really made my day. So to everybody that had a hand in putting it on, the chamber, all the participants, and of course the spectators, thank you. But to Public Works, you know, those guys got in there. I mean, they were blowing the sidewalks off and had the street sweeper going before the lights turned off. So those guys do a heck of a job, and we definitely appreciate you guys. But To Councilman Whiting and Councilman Evelyn, I know you guys ran for city council for all the fame, riches, and glory that it provides. And I say that in jest because anybody knows that not a single one of us are famous, rich, or in some position of glory. But thank you guys very, very much. We appreciate your service. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Crier.
Thank you, Mayor. The parade was great. We had a big crowd out there. I don't think I ever saw a crowd that big in a long time, standing out there, watching and everything. It was great. I went through the parade route, parked my vehicle. I had to walk a ways just to get to the street again to watch it. But I was really impressed on the attendance there, and the weather was perfect. And we had great floats, great bands, and it was just a terrific event. And now we got the Christmas tree lighting and everything, and so all you young folks, go out there and see Santa and make your Santa requests. And there's a lot of new toys out there and new things, and get what you can at this time. But it's a great event there on Fifth Street Plaza. Ed Gaither did a great job doing it, and other people that worked under Ed did a great, I thought you were talking about me. Sorry about that. But, they did a great job to put it up there and get ready for the community. It's a community event, and a lot of people donated a lot of money to get it going, to set it up, pay for the Christmas trees and everything, so that the kids can have someplace to go to. I know our mayor here has done an awful lot for the use of the cranes and different equipment and donation that he's done. There's a lot of unsung heroes out there that have done an awful lot to make all this happen, and I appreciate for what they do. This morning, I went to a meeting in Bakersfield at the California Air Resource Board, and technically it's the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Advisory Board, and I'm on the board. I sit on the board of. Things are coming down the pike that's going to affect everybody here. Every citizen in this state is going to be affected what they want to do, and things are trying to pass. And when we came up for voting and everything, you'd be amazed the question and stuff that people even scared most of the people who are on the board. And the people on the board, not just from Kern County, it's all 8 counties up and down the valley on there. And a lot of them had a lot of questions and a lot of concerns and stuff, and how can they do that? Some of the stuff doesn't even pertain to CARB, like pesticides in fields. Nothing to do with California Air Resource Board, nothing whatsoever, not even in the purview of it, but they're trying to sneak it in there. We caught it and trying to get it thrown out, and there's other issues in there concerning, gas and diesel, particulate matters floating around the air, vehicles, how long we're going to have them. There's different things that's going to affect everybody. It's too many even to tell you all. I have to get my notes out, but there's an awful lot in there. We are going to have another meeting on the 15th. I encourage the people to go there and listen, see what's going on, and and show an impact. I'm going to be there, and I'm being there to represent my position, and David Couch will be there as representative from California Air Resource Board. I sit on a different board, but they're going to have a major one to vote what we talked about and discuss it. But I encourage everybody to go there and listen, see what's happening, and they can go up there and do a public comment and say some things, because they will listen before it becomes a law or it'll be a mandate. But it's affecting everybody. It's making it hard for businessmen, oil companies, especially the oil company. They're going to talk about sumps out there, and for the oil companies, abandonment and all the different things with the oil industry is going to be in that deal we discussed about. But it affects everybody in this room. And don't think you're exempt from it, because if you'll be taxed, pay fees, or something in there. It's going to cost you some way or another. They're going to get into your wallet. I don't care how hard you try to hide your wallet, they're going to get it. And But I just encourage people to go there. If people have any questions, it'll be held at at 9:00 a.m. at the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control Board, right there off of Flyover Court. And if somebody wants to ride, I'll be happy to have somebody rides with me to go there and participate. But I think it's very, very important for the public to get involved in it, because the sad part about when you go to these meetings, hardly anybody from the public attends. And so there's a lot of us are fighting it, but we sure could use some backup. That's all I have to say, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, sir. I would have to agree with the statements made regarding the Christmas parade. It was a wonderful affair. The weather was nice. I was still outside sipping hot chocolate outside of a business on Center Street when Public Works, Chris Krejci and his crew were out there cleaning up, blowing things up, and I mean, it looked neat as a pin by the time I got out of there. Those guys are something. So thanks to everybody who put that together and participated. Our police force was out there and making sure that everything was kept safe and legal. I appreciate that very much. They did a fine job of that. The lighting of the Christmas tree was a wonderful event. This is the second year for something that's going to be a tradition, and it was well attended. It was a lot of fun. It was very nice. It's a really neat opportunity, and they're going to have a bunch of different things going on there. So I encourage people to go by and take a look at their calendar, because it's a neat addition to our Christmas opportunities. Also, if you want to drop a couple of nickels in those buckets there to kind of help fund that stuff. We'd like to grow the Christmas tree too, and that's the neat thing about our Christmas tree is you can continue to add a layer and it will continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger over the years. It's readily grown. So I want to thank everybody like you did who worked so hard to make those things happen for all the people of the city of Taft. All right, next up, department reports. Item number 6, do we have any department reports this evening? Seeing none. Item number 7, city manager statement. City Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. No statement.
All right. Item number 8, city attorney statements. Okay.
Thank you, no statement.
No statement, okay. Future agenda requests this evening, gentlemen. Item number 9. Seeing none. Okay, then we'll go right into the consent calendar, items 10 through 14. All items listed on the consent calendar shall be considered routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Any item removed from the consent calendar will be considered after the regular business items. Are there any items on the consent calendar that any member of the public would like to comment on? Seeing none, those items are, item number 10 is the minutes for the November 15th, 2022 regularly scheduled meeting. Item number 11 is the payment of bills, some $247,000 worth. Item number 12 is the treasurer's report. Recommendation is a motion to receive and file the treasurer's reports for the months of September and October of 2022. Item 13 is the second reading, general plan amendment and zoning ordinance amendment for the downtown Taft specific plan and amendments to the zoning regulations to accelerate housing development. The recommendation is a motion to approve and amend the City of Taft Municipal Code, adopting an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Taft approving zoning ordinance amendment number 2021-05, an amendment of chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, and 14 of Title VI of the Taft Municipal Code to accelerate housing production in the City of Taft. Lastly, item 14 is approval of a memorandum of agreement and employee compensation plan. Recommendation is a motion to adopt a resolution entitled, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft approving the memorandum of agreement and employee compensation plan for Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local 521. Does any member of the council wish to remove any of these items from the consent calendar? Nope. Seeing none, at this time I would entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items 10 through 14.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Crier,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant,
Yes.
Councilmember Egan,
Yes.
Councilmember Whiting,
Yes.
Mayor Nor.
Yes. Thank you, that's approved on 5-0 vote. Well, guess what? That brings us to the adjournment. I want to thank you all for being a part of this evening's meeting. I want to thank Mark Staples for working with the consultant for doing that in-depth study, as well as, and Teresa Binkley back from her global tour. Would you like to come address everybody, Teresa Binkley? No, okay. Teresa says hi. Welcome back, Teresa. It's a pleasure to have you here, that's for certain. So thank you all for that. And at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Good evening, everybody.